This project attempts to recover elements of ancient history lost in time through the combined methodologies of psychic channeling and remote viewing. Our subjects in this case are Egyptian Pharaoh Akhenaten and his lovely wife Nefertiti. There is little, if any, information about when Akhenaten died, and no information why he wasn't buried in his own royal tomb. Similarly, there's only speculations about what happened to Nefertiti. My interest in these two began when I learned about this statue of Nefertiti, discovered in 1912, buried in the sand for over 3,000 years. In amazing condition, she looked so beautiful, I tried to channel her. The data I got back from her, and later Akhenaten himself, was so significant. They described events not recorded in history, detailing the bizarre nature of Akhenaten's death. Circumstances so unusual, they partially explain why their later history was so mysterious. Since there was no recorded account of their story, I involved another psychic data-gathering methodology, remote viewing, to further research the events they described. Now, the data returned by an individual remote viewing session can often seem fragmentary, but when multiple viewers are used, such as in this project, their data can be pieced together to form a clearer picture. For our needs, this was all we needed. Even fragmentary data would be sufficient to verify or dispute unique elements of Akhenaten's story. I'll be saying more about remote viewing and this mission statement later on. But first, let's get into the channeling portions of this project. My channeling is more like an interview. I speak my questions, then perceive their responses mentally, which I repeat out loud as I hear them. I voice record and transcribe to text all of my channelings, which allows me to study them in detail, a practice I find very enjoyable, and this is part of my hobby. In one of my follow-on sessions, they revealed a surprising historical detail. Akhenaten didn't die in Egypt like everyone thought. They were traveling to Syria for medical treatments.
He was suffering from gout attacks. We went elsewhere, looking for help.
And while there, something unusual happened.
I was not under the care of a physician at the time of my death. Rather, I was assassinated.
And that brings us up to tonight, where I'm going to try to channel Akhenaten once more, this time for more details about his death. There's something different you need to know about this and my previous channelings with them specifically. They expressed a difficulty communicating with me because of my inhibitions and inability to perceive some of their thoughts. I found this statement very interesting, and seeking a solution, they proposed communicating details my mind could easily comprehend. But for the rest, we would need to build a bridge toward each other. I learned exactly what that meant later on when they started to narrate details of their experiences, then paused and asked me to psychically experience and describe their locations, which they would then either correct or offer additional details. To be honest, I wasn't sure why they had me do this, but as you'll soon see, they prodded me like this so my mind could readily accept details it would normally discard. I have no written paperwork in front of me, and my eyes were always closed, so I have to remember everything said to think up follow-on questions, which takes time. My original recorded session took almost 2 hours, but after deleting all of the silence, this word-for-word reenactment of my channeling with Akhenaten is only about 20 minutes. The remote viewing portion of this project will follow immediately after. It's 8:18 on March 12th. I'm alone and just woke up from a 2-hour nap. I went through all my notes earlier, and I have additional questions for Akhenaten. So let's begin. Dear sir, if you can hear me, please acknowledge.
I hear you, Don. Go ahead.
The information you've provided so far is actually more interesting than I thought. We've talked about several things, and now I'd like to get a summary of the events leading to your death, if that's possible. Can you recall these events? I was asking his permission here because I don't know how much a deceased person remembers of their physical death. He hinted earlier there was some sort of violence involved.
I can try. Your heart is in the right place, so this makes it easier. You need to understand that I am without a body, therefore easier to revisit these details without concern or harm. Now on the evening of my death, I was suitably dressed for the occasion of a ceremony to take place in the city, the one I chose for medical attention. That's right. We were in attendance at banquet.
Did I get that right? You were at a banquet?
Let me explain. There are details here that will require considerable rumination, meaning I need to consider and puzzle over them carefully. Make no attempt to adjust what I am about to say. What I need you to say is, my heart lies in the gaps of the ocean, for I was cast adrift. In an attempt to salvage my body, others gathered around me, for purposes I think to circumnavigate my appearance in an attempt to look me in the eye.
What did he just say? Did you just get that? I'm not even sure I understood any of that.
I am of the heart you're doing well, but struggling with these details. Let's try again. I need you to think of me floating in the water. Yes. Now, what do you make of that?
Okay, I think of you as floating face down in the water. You are clothed in light color or white garments, and it's in the evening.
That's enough. I have more. You need to look beyond your mind's eye and relinquish control over those facets of life that inhibit your seeing. You believe I can assist you, charming boy, but I can't believe in the impossible. So I will teach you something here. You need to open your mind to possibilities and events beyond your understanding. Now, let's try again. I am Akhenaten, and I am here with Don D. Corcel in an attempt to describe how I died. My heart is in your hands. Now tell me how you perceive.
I see his face. He's wearing a cloth headdress. I went silent at this point, trying to probe the blackness of my mind for perhaps a minute or two. I didn't seem to be getting anything other than the usual scattered blackness behind my closed eyes. Then he interrupted me.
You need to keep moving, otherwise you'll fall asleep. Don't reprimand me here, for I am telling you something important. My mind is yours for the asking. Tell me what you see.
I'm sorry, I don't perceive anything. All I'm getting is a twilight kind of impression. There seems to be water nearby. Because of Akhenaten's insistence, I started probing the mental blackness in a more vocal manner, saying these words out loud. What happened before your attack, if that's the right word? I see a conversational setting. You're speaking, you're laughing, you're well dressed. Look to my left. It appears you're in a building with columns. Look now behind me. I see furnishings and room accessories. The room is beautiful and well lit. Where's all the lighting coming from? I get the impression that the room is well lit, but I'm not seeing any lanterns or candles, more like a large oval shape right in the center of my vision. That doesn't make any sense for this time frame.
You need to look beyond that. Try to look beyond the bright light which is perhaps masking the details you seek.
I tried to focus and stare through the bright light at this point. My impressions through the light are vague.
I will tell you something. You are accurate on one point. We need to become adept with each other to proceed. That means you need to meld your mind with mine.
I started to wonder if the bright oval light I was perceiving was actually Akhenaten's mind in the mental world. A bright oval bubble I had to look into and perhaps blend with. And it's curious because next he wanted me to look through it and to meld with his mind. Interesting. I wish to meld my mind with Akhenaten. Let his mind flow into mine freely with no inhibitions, nothing blocking his thoughts.
Good. Now I will continue. You need to feel chilled because I am cold. Dead from hunger and starvation because I was kept alive only so long. Where am I?
I'm trying to feel. Where am I?
Don't be afraid.
Where am I? Where am I? Oh, for a moment there I saw a mental image of someone in a chariot. He was riding and laughing, but his facial expression was like someone high on drugs, laughingly out of their mind.
Don't be afraid.
His mind seems delirious and giddy, more than drunk.
Accurate.
He wants you to know you're on the right track. You can stand up and look around.
Look to my left. I see people running up to you with sticks as you're riding or coming to a stop. They're attempting to rob you, I think. I don't understand why they're coming after you, beating you with sticks. You fall out of the chariot with injuries. You're lying on the ground. Oh my God, I think that's enough.
You have discovered the cause of my downfall. Now proceed in time forward.
Okay, you have apparently been rescued at this point. You are lying flat and still in a dimly lit room. There are several women attending you. Where am I? I get the impression I'm on the boat again, but not completely sure.
You almost have it.
Best I can say is you're in a small room, lying flat, and several people, I believe women, are attending you. Let me look closer. Oh my, your face is badly battered. Oh, no. I just got a fleeting impression that you were riding recklessly through the outskirts of town and did something that aggravated those men. What was it that you did that brought on their attack? You injured someone. You hit and injured someone, so they took revenge on you for your recklessness. Oh, no. Please tell me if I'm anywhere near correct with these perceptions.
You have it accurate, so far as I can tell, though they did not seem belligerent at first. They approached quietly, then produced weapons and staves of a hurtful nature. It's these produced the wounds you observed.
I was going to say that they left you there in the street, but then the dark water appeared again. So now I'm wondering, did they throw you in the water?
You have it accurate. Now I will say something. Peace be to you for relinquishing those details upon my body, for I was foretold you would bring them forth with accuracy. Now, each requires details I am prepared to explain. Of all, the most important was I was indeed riding a chariot on the evening of my death. I encountered a servant whom I shall not name, but he or she met their demise under the wheels of my chariot, meaning I broke her bones, driving over and killing her. That created the growing resentment among her family. A directed revenge, battering my body with sticks, as you perceived, until near death, at which point they took my body too. And I am speaking to you now. You need to say the words I say. They took me to the water and dumped me, floating.
Oh my God. Let me try to summarize this. My eyes are still closed, so I'll try to rebuild this from memory. You went riding in a chariot that night.
Accurate.
You were drunk, and you carelessly ran over a woman, I believe, killing her. This created resentment among the locals who undertook revenge by first approaching you casually, then, in growing anger, battered you with sticks or staves to the point of near death. Then they carried your body to the water and threw it in, face down. Is any of what I just said accurate?
You have the details distinctly. Now let's spend a moment to discuss the recovery of my body. How was it found?
The question in my mind here is, where was your military protection, your personal guard? Let me think here. You went riding on a chariot, but they had none. So that means you abandoned them. You abandoned them to go riding alone. So they must have tried to follow you somehow. And I have a vision of someone running fast on foot and throwing a spear or staff. I'm not sure what that means, but still, at some point your guards must have caught up with your empty chariot, went on an expanded search, and eventually found your body in the water. Geez, I feel like I'm making this all up.
But you're not. I think you've got it.
Akhenaten, if you're hearing me properly, can you put me in touch with someone who understands the details of the aftermath? What follows is someone else speaking. I guess one of Akhenaten's military escorts.
In the case of his death and discovery, he reckons you have the details precisely accurate. He wants to say you are ingenious in attempting to recover these threads of historical accuracy. I understand the difficulty approaching your mind like this, but these details are hard to fathom without experiencing them yourself. My condolences to you both.
He's offering his sympathies to us after experiencing a death. To both of us. Jeez. Another thing, I've seen channeled entities refer to threads of time before. I've got a theory about this. Your conscious awareness must be creating a thread, a continuous chain of thoughts linked to your life experiences. In other words, whatever you're continuously experiencing is creating a kind of thread. And from my experience with these deceased souls or incorporeal intellects, however you wish to think of them, they're weaving their thread so long as they're physically conscious. That means Akhenaten's thread won't include details after he died. That's why I asked for someone who understood the details of the aftermath. And did you notice that Akhenaten needed me to fill in the blanks in his recollection, in his consciousness thread? I didn't know it at the time, but he was preparing me in previous sessions to do exactly that. Now, why would that be? I'm starting to believe that his inebriated condition created a vague set of memories for him to draw upon. He needed my remote perception abilities to expand his vague perceptions. And for some reason, I believe this is a very important takeaway. Now let's get back to the ongoing story here. May I please speak to Nefertiti now?
She approaches.
You have accurately discovered my whereabouts, so I will tell you the rest as I remember it. Your details are succinct on all points about his recovery, and that leads us now to a description of his whereabouts afterwards. We took his body and dressed it best we could, considering the damage that had been done. His face was badly marred, his mouth broken, and I for one felt horrible at his sight. He needed bandages just to be carried on board the boat, the one we had arrived on, bringing this aspect of his life to a close. You have additional questions?
This story answered a number of my initial questions. How he died was explained, and the reason for his death was not accidental nor a result of animosity from plotting power-hungry Egyptian royals, but through an event of his own reckless behavior. I am certainly having trouble with this story.
You've done well. Congratulations. You've succeeded in telling a horrific story that I can't bear to explain myself because of my own guilt, and thereby hangs the tale of my assassination. It was caused by rebellious family members seeking revenge for my carelessness.
I didn't expect Akhenaten to involve me the way he did here, to ask me to remote view and describe these gory details. I did not see him riding over and killing anyone, and I guess that's part of how the subconscious works. It has to filter out all sorts of distasteful things to help you maintain your sanity. I'd like to step back in time just before those events. Somehow, Akhenaten was provided a chariot to ride, and I'm wondering where that came from.
You are astute asking that. He sees in your mind a party, an event he was invited to attend. The host made a chariot available to his guests as an extravagant pleasure for their entertainment.
Were you taken to the invitation in a single wagon or cart, protected by your military escort?
They proceeded on foot next to our transportation. Yes, they sensed danger that evening because of my reckless attitude. Accurate.
So when you got to the party, I want to call it a party, but maybe it was a meeting, ceremony, or banquet, whatever, you eventually left and found a chariot outside.
Which I had every right to use, correct. But under the circumstances I should not have been riding without an escort. My quarrelsome state led to the events mentioned, meaning I drove directly into someone without thinking, causing their death. Their life meant nothing to me, as was the case all evening. I am fortunate to have these details exposed to the world through you. End of story.
At this point, I took a 10-minute break, and then I continued. Nefertiti, if you've overheard this conversation, I'm having difficulty. Instead of hearing yours and his words in my mind, I felt like he was asking me to fill in certain details. Can you please say something? I don't even know what questions to ask at this point.
You have done well, and I commend your efforts and accuracy. He believes you might be completely accurate, except for a few minor details, which he can relate at another time. I am impressed by the fact you came back to us again, this evening. This was a difficult undertaking, and we appreciate your efforts.
Wow, the clarity in Nefertiti's mind is certainly apparent, and a refreshing change from Akhenaten.
Now as to my own story, I shall relate these details. Upon his death, we took his body out.
And I'm seeing an image of water again and a body floating in water.
We took his body out of the water and produced bandages along the lines of linen used for various other purposes and wrapped his body in an effort to preserve its dignity. He looked terrible, and I must say you are accurate on that point alone. We left for Egypt that night. I wished to depart before further hostility might occur, meaning an attack on our ship. So, we fled in the night. My heart relays these details with heaviness, because I was so looking forward to an enjoyable time, visiting these foreign lands. Now, you must say something.
From the story assembled, it sounds like Akhenaten abandoned you and his military protection to ride that chariot. They needed to follow and chase him on foot. Were you aware of any of this at the time?
She thinks a moment.
I was inside enjoying myself at the party, yes. I did not learn of these events till later. I was told by our attaché, who shall remain nameless, that Akhenaten killed someone accidentally and was himself killed in acts of revenge. A horrible shock to my person. He needed to be taken to the boat for restitution, meaning to dress his body fitting to a corpse. He wants to ascertain your ability to fathom these details. He questions your mind, how you relate.
I don't feel emotional stress hearing these embarrassingly tragic events. I'm more concerned about getting the story straight, and I'm experiencing a sense of concern and disbelief in that regard. My mind is otherwise a blank. I'm attempting to perceive your words through the blackness of my mind, as usual. Does that answer your question?
He likes you a lot, because you're honest, not pretending to know it all, but rather to use introspection to feel the truth in the words and story given.
That's accurate.
I guess I'm curious. Upon your return, to what extent were these details given to the Egyptian royalty?
You're trying to understand the after effects of this situation. My mind is a blank here, filled with grief, making it impossible to think in those terms at present. But we can resume our discussion at another time. You have done well this evening. I commend your efforts.
Thank you. And that will be all for this evening. It is now 10:04 p.m. You saw how I channeled someone claiming to be Pharaoh Akhenaten. He, in a piecemeal delivery, revealed details about his assassination. These details involved his reckless attitude one evening driving a chariot in a foreign country that resulted in the accidental death of a local bystander. And secondly, the growing animosity and ultimate revenge taken upon Akhenaten by the victim's family members. This resulted in Akhenaten's own death and their efforts to quietly dispose his body. That's quite a story. So what's going on here? Well, I've been practicing channeling privately for about 26 years now. It's a hobby I enjoy, but the saints, spirits, and ETs I've contacted over the years I've mostly ignored. It's easy to get caught up in their ideas and belief systems, and frankly, I have my own life to live. So I transcribe and review my recorded sessions, file them away, and then mostly forget about them. But in this case, I just couldn't do that. There's a lot of misinformation about Pharaoh Akhenaten and his wife, Nefertiti, on the internet. He's often referred to as the heretic pharaoh, or most hated pharaoh. But I also know that history is written by the victorious. And in Akhenaten's case, the powerful priest class Akhenaten tried to put out of business did return back to power, and the Egyptian royalty that succeeded him tried to erase him from history. There's even other claims. He was an alien, an ET from outer space. What I believe is feeding these wild fantasies is the lack of genuine historical information. No one knows what happened to Akhenaten, when or how he died. Nothing is clear. But the details I stumbled upon here gave hints why their history was cloudy. An embarrassing royal accident, deliberately concealed. If they're true, this would be an important missing piece in history. I just couldn't let go of that. So I took it up a notch. I'm a member in good standing with the remote viewing community, having taken 4 different courses from various instructors and worked with many excellent remote viewers in the past. This allowed me to create this project using 7 high-caliber viewers. Together, I set out to finally learn if my channeling efforts had any credible value. I'd like to make this presentation more accessible to people unfamiliar with remote viewing or how it works, so let me say a few more words about it. The most important thing that you need to know about remote viewing is the viewers are only given an 8-digit number as their mission objective, and nothing else. It sounds impossible, but using that number alone, the viewers record whatever perceptions they perceive. What you'll be seeing here are 2 general types of remote viewings. The first type uses the remote viewing strategies developed for the military, and they produce multi-page, handwritten documents we call sessions. These are the controlled remote viewing people and their variations. The other type of viewers are more like freewheeling psychics, and their style is often referred to as written RV. They might send you their perceptions in a short text or Facebook message. And while we're talking about it, I should probably say a few words how channeling fits into all of this. As far as I can tell, it takes years of practice to develop the poise and confidence to deal with beings speaking to you from what you might call another dimension. Fear is a big deal, and over time you learn how to manage that. There's also different kinds of channelers. The more common variety that I've seen tend to describe what a deceased person used to wear, the kinds of jobs they had, and maybe a few short verbal messages. I tend to think of these people as more like psychic channelers. But the kind of channeling I do is purely conversational. That is, a back and forth question and answer format, recording my words and their responses in a voice recorder. This kind of channeling is telepathy. And in my experience, clear conversations can be had with any individual, regardless of their native language. I get the impression their words are conveyed to your mind through a kind of mental resonating. It's almost like a universal language. All of my channeled contacts I hear speaking in English, and they understand my English mental vibrations in their language. Compared to the two types of remote viewing, channeling takes a lot more time. What you saw in the first segment there was just one of a series of long channeled conversations I had to do to uncover this story. So let's get started how I created the Project Remote Viewing Mission Statement. 57289134. The viewers will ignore all theories, written and verbal history, and report only on the actual physical events describing Egyptian Pharaoh Akhenaten's last days of physical life and related events immediately after. Notice I tried to exclude any possible source of misinformation, including many theories or written history. I wanted data only from the genuine source, the actual physical events themselves. Additionally, there's no hints or suggestions given in this mission statement. I don't mention anything about Akhenaten riding a chariot, killing someone, being thrown into the water, or any involvement with a boat. This statement, conveyed to the remote viewers only through that project number, remember, is directed to their minds. So you don't want any words that might potentially confuse them or direct them to report only what you want to hear. And there's one other thing. What Akhenaten described was a double homicide. That makes this a particularly difficult remote viewing project because of a well-known self-defense mechanism built into your subconscious. Remote viewers tend not to see acts of violence, just as you in real life might look away from violence performed in front of your eyes. You just don't want to see those sorts of things, and your subconscious knows that too. So it too looks away to insulate and protect your mind. Let's take the remote viewer's data point by point.
Of all, the most important was I was indeed riding a chariot on the evening of my death.
This is a 3D model of an Egyptian chariot, which might be helpful here. Let me get closer to those wheels. Those are wood wheels with metal rims. This reminds me of something I saw in Viewer 6's session. Oh my God, what an amazing match! He's even sketched a bit of the understructure there. And he's got words, closed off and wooden. Amazing, rimmed with metal and made of wood, exactly right. This isn't luck. This is exceptional remote viewing. Now let's back away a little bit. This seems to match a sketch from Viewer 5. two overlapping circles that he labeled as round, driven or steered, and ominous. Remember, these viewer perceptions are only coming from this 8-digit number. As amazing as it seems, the viewers have no idea what they're describing. Viewer 6 also wrote art on the wall. Here's another sketch by viewer 6, a wheeled vehicle, which at first glance I thought was a truck. But those wheels, they're mounted outside the body on the left and right sides. He also said it had windowless entry. Interesting. Let's go back over here now. Viewer 6 sketched something looking like an axle hub, but he added the word screaming. Viewer 5 sketched a rotational motion like a tube inside another tube, like a telescope. If you've seen a telescope, the collapsing tubes can rotate within each outer one. It's so interesting how the mind interprets these perceptions. This sketch by viewer 3 shows another correspondence. This shape is pulling me, he says, and he adds some blurry color perceptions there as well. Moving to this overhead view, this seems to symbolically match this sketch by viewer 6. Something central and draping off the left and right sides. Oh, wow. And here's a few other verbal perceptions, all of which seem to describe a fast and potentially dangerous vehicle.
Under the circumstances, I should not have been riding without an escort. My quarrelsome state led to the events mentioned.
The remote viewers also got perceptions about the main subject. I'm pulling these data from the spreadsheets I created for all written data. Here's the perceptions the written RV people submitted. A perpetrator. Wow. Male, 5'7", with an intent to hurt someone. Strikes me as creepy. Brown skin. Had sufficient money to mislead the investigation. Case details were carefully wiped out. Very interesting. He was a driver, male, about 40, had a wife or girlfriend. I'm assuming that would be Nefertiti. He wasn't happy with his life and connected to dark people. I presume referring to dark skin again. Viewer 3, again, a male, lost in thought, sleepy or unconscious. And viewer 4 got the impression the primary subject was really stoned. Oh, wow, how apropos. Viewer 5, a male subject again, black hair, prominent lips and nose, a leader, powerful and elite, something secret or a reputation on the line. And there's something evil here, with a conflicted or mixed up heart. This viewer also picked up on the subject's emotions, like animosity, dislike, and jealousy, the need to do harm. An interesting psychological profile. Viewer 6 describes a pagan tan male. And yes, Akhenaten was pagan. He worshipped the sun god Aten, having several piercings and wearing a head ornament. Yet another corroboration with Akhenaten's story as a drunk driver, even trying to blame the victim. This is powerful stuff. Viewer 7's only personality observation was this martini glass. The overall consensus from all viewers strongly agrees with Akhenaten's story. Let's move on.
I encountered a servant whom I shall not name, but he or she met their demise under the wheels of my chariot, meaning I broke her bones, driving over and killing her.
This is the data that relates most closely to some sort of accident. Viewer 6 created this series of panel illustrations like a cartoon reenactment. First, there's someone driving a vehicle by themselves. Then a worried look stepping outside their vehicle. Deep breathing, like suffocation. Skid Row. Then he shows the main subject walking back along an elevated stony bridge-like structure, bending down to look at what appears to be a human body on the ground. His reaction, "Oh no." He picks up the body, which from those illustrations appears to be rather small, like a child. He added these verbal impressions: screaming, state of confusion, examining under something, tire and drag marks, and of course the collision with the pedestrian which he sketched. Viewer 7 added, perhaps a catastrophic event, some kind of energy hitting. Viewer 5 writes, like a bowling ball collision. He also sketches someone holding and looking down at something. Perhaps his subconscious mind protected him from seeing it. His reaction, "I can't believe that happened." Additional words, navigational contact, and may have gone into each other. This viewer also perceived the subject's sense of evading, touching it, something ominous, a mind-altering experience. These are very powerful perceptions. The overall consensus here, again, agrees with Akhenaten's story, and 2 viewers indicated that the victim was small in stature, possibly a child.
This created the growing resentment among her family. A directed revenge, battering my body with sticks, as you perceived, until near death, at which point they took me to the water and dumped me, floating.
Viewer 6 said he was a drunk driver, convicted of a crime, and tried to blame the victim. Yelling began, and he shows punches thrown. His next sketch is very close to what I myself perceived during my channeling session, but I saw several people clustered around with raised arms and staves in their hands. Viewer 4 shows rocks being used, and both provide these additional comments. Viewer 5 picked up more forceful movements and strokes, the need to do harm, an evil, historic, and true event. So what happened after that? Viewer 3 sketches a sharp, perilous drop, and that sketch dovetails into Viewer 5's sketch of a similar drop, indicating the subject seems to be descending far down. Potentially below that, Viewer 6 draws a bridge, and Viewer 1 also indicates a bridge, adding that it was foggy and that a body was disposed in water. Viewer 6 next shows a body below the bridge, on rocks near water. Another viewer senses a drop from a height or ledge, and adds there's no movement, eyes closed. Viewer 5 perceives it's motionless, and may have fallen or died on the rocks. Another viewer senses something dropped higher up. There's water, and there's a ghost. The consensus here is the subject was dropped from a height. A bridge was somehow involved. Water was involved, and the subject was either already dead or died from the fall.
My heart lies in the gaps of the ocean, for I was cast adrift. How was it found?
Body recovery. Viewer 5 senses the phrase, on the hunt, and Viewer 6 mentions the need for facial recognition. It's hard to believe that all this is coming from this 8-digit number. Then, most of the remote viewers sketch a boat. Viewer 6's illustration looks close to what I believe might be a royal barge, adding a sketch of the rear, labeling it a structure and the stern. Viewer 5 mentions it's in the ocean and granite shoals. He sketches something labeled looking down, which might be rippling water, then adds down in the deep, down in the grime. Another viewer writes, disturbing and broken parts. Viewer 5 senses a conflicted searching. I guess that means like a worried searching. possibly the presence of a crocodile, which would certainly increase the risk of retrieval. He sketches bumpy prominences labeled granite-like, a rocky outcropping. Viewer 5 sketches somebody jumping into a whirlpool, a hole in the water, an ocean tunnel. A leader is involved. Not only is this data supportive to the story, but it also conveys a sense of worried concern and a surprising change of events. And there's still more.
We took his body out of the water. His face was badly marred, his mouth broken. We produced bandages along the lines of linen and wrapped his body in an effort to preserve its dignity, fitting to a corpse.
The post-mortem. Viewer 6 reported how the body was experimentally lifted. Now think about how would you lift a broken body from dangerous waters. He sketched the body on a wooden platform. Viewer 4 adds something has a wood pillow. Wow. Viewer 6 corroborates Nefertiti's perception of his broken jaw, and another viewer sketches him now looking like a mummy, matching that he was wrapped in linen, fitting to a corpse. This last part caught me by surprise. Many of the viewers actually described the entities I channeled. Several viewers perceived tunnels or space portals. Viewer 4 saw someone looking through the portal, waiting and watching. I believe that might be my spirit guide, Nirmala Sundari. He also further describes this person as not being seen, undetectable, untouchable, powerful, and interconnected. An energy coming out of a kind of door or portal. And notice it's handing me something on a plate. This viewer also senses it has a lot of intention to reach me. In his next sketch, he senses there's something interdimensional that is searching for a written prophecy.
Peace be to you for relinquishing those details upon my body, for I was foretold you would bring them forth with accuracy.
His next comments here accurately describe how I think channeling works. You move your spirit body into space-time. Then there's a nonlinear information transfer that involves waiting. That's right, I do a lot of waiting during my channeled interviews. He senses a protecting gatekeeper with an intention to reach a goal. He sees a glowing light and an interdimensional energy transfer. Amazingly, he sees 2 or more interconnected planes. These are amazing perceptions. Viewer 5 perceives a reunion of people, familiars, giving a warm greeting. Additionally, there's strategic planning going on to liberate someone or some people, most likely an opposing force. I believe that might be referring to intellects trapped by fear. This may also be a mystical experience, he says, like falling into darkness, which is what I myself perceive when I close my eyes. Darkness. It's dimensionally shifting, powerful, and elite. There's that word again. He also senses a scene of a space battle. I believe that's true, but it's not about physical space, but rather mental space. These beings are superheroes that are good and meeting here. An encampment or holy alliance. A sense of seriousness, but also positivity and a magical component. I get the sense of elevation. So pretty interesting, right? I think the remote viewing data leaves little doubt, at least in my mind. The major points in Akhenaten's story are true, making this a royal accident deliberately covered up 3,000 years ago. And in my experience, this is the first time I've ever heard of remote viewing used to verify a channeled historic account, which potentially makes this project something of a historic event itself. So I showed you what my channeled session looked like, and I set up this remote viewing project, keeping the mission statement clear of misleading information sources and suggestions. There's one other detail I think I should mention before closing. It's about the remote viewers perceiving the channeled entities themselves. One of the viewers perceived these entities as involved in a holy alliance, having a strategic plan to liberate someone or some people. Another viewer sketched these entities with strong intentions to contact me, even handing me information on a plate. This struck a chord because months before I started this project, my saintly spirit guide told me she needed intelligence that could deliver messages upon those who needed them. I've never delivered a message upon somebody before. I didn't even know what that meant. Until months later when Akhenaten said,
"Peace be to you for relinquishing those details upon my body."
a story he said he couldn't bear to explain himself because of his guilt. Now, it might just be me, but I'm getting the impression his channeled confession, I guess you might call it, freed Akhenaten in some mental or spiritual way. He even said, "I'm fortunate to have these details exposed to the world through you." I find this very interesting. And the question I keep asking myself, and let me just ask you, can a soul or deceased intellect become trapped in a cage of their own guilt or fear? There's something for you to think about. Nefertiti mentioned my channeling might be completely accurate except for a few minor details Akhenaten could relate at another time. Well, I've decided not to pursue those details since we've already covered the main points, and this may be a very popular remote viewing target in the future. So I'll leave you all room for your future remote viewings out there. Go ahead, give it a shot, and it would be a great honor for us if you would cite this original project in your future remote viewing taskings. Speaking of honor, let's take a moment to honor the remote viewers in this project.